Howdy YouTube family, it's BoltRN coming to you with another day's topic. Today we're going to talk about how do you get into the ICU the fastest right out of nursing school. I've got a lot of people asking me that here lately. Is to get into CRNA school, of course you have to be an ICU nurse first, but they want to know how do you get into the ICU right out of school, because it's really difficult to do. So I'm going to give you 4 tips on how to get in. The first thing I recommend, tip number 1, is to do a BSN program over an ADN program. Now, before people get upset and start thinking that I'm saying ADN nurses are not good or they're less than or anything like that, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that in my experience and in the units I've worked in probably 8 different ICUs all across the U.S. as a travel nurse. I've noticed that typically the new grads who are hired into the unit are BSN nurses. Another thing that I recognize the difference between the 2 programs, because I have friends who have done ADN and then myself have done BSN, you have more specialized knowledge that they teach you in your BSN program. They're longer typically, and they spend a little bit more time going through different types of specialty rotations, and they seem to invest more time in intensive care unit information and intensive care unit rotations. One of the local ADN programs that was near my BSN program, they were well known for telling their students that they trained them to be med-surg nurses first, and then if they wanted to specialize later on in their career, they were fine to do that, but their perspective was a new nurse should be a med-surg nurse for at least 2 or 3 years, and then you can go out and do other things. But they didn't want to train new nurses to go into specialties. That was their perspective. And my girlfriend for some years, she went through an ADN program that had the same kind of perspective. So whereas my BSN program trained a lot of us to go into specialties, and a huge group of us did graduate and go off to, all of us went to I'd probably say 6 or 7 of us from my graduating class all started out in the same ICU in the local area. So a BSN program typically gives you kind of that edge. And plus, a lot of hospitals want you to have your BSN, so it opens up a broader horizon of where you could go work if you have your BSN versus your ADN. So that's my first tip. Tip number 2. So I told you before, get in a BSN program. That doesn't mean that's a golden ticket that you just get straight into an ICU. In my BSN program, and from what I've heard from others, they will let you choose your preceptor your 5th semester. When you're in your 5th semester of nursing school, usually you get assigned a preceptor, or some programs let you pick one that you spend the semester following behind, doing a bunch of clinical rotation shifts with that person, kind of getting you. It's like an internship almost, or like a residency that med school after med school doctors do. And so if you score well and make good grades during your BSN program, at least at mine, they let you pick a specialty that was harder, like an ICU specialty. You could pick that to be your location you wanted to precept in if you had good grades. Now, if you were a struggling student, if you were making C's all the time and barely making any B's, things like that, they did not let you pick your specialty preceptorship. They actually selected it for you, and it was almost always med-surg. So that's another trick. Is my second tip is get into the BSN program, but make sure you maintain high grades. If you want that ICU experience and you want to go to CRNA school one day, you're going to need those high grades anyway. So just make your high grades because you're reaching for CRNA, but it's also going to help enable you to get that preceptorship so that you can then get into an ICU. Because if you precept in an ICU, that is a golden opportunity to impress that unit manager, and to have that unit manager see you work multiple shifts with one of the fellow nurses that they have hired there that you're precepting under, and you can impress that nurse that you're precepting under, and that nurse can then go to the manager and give a word of recommendation for you, and then that manager will also probably see you themselves and see how you're working and functioning with the other nurses. And if you do well, then that is a great bonus for them to hire you as soon as you graduate. If there's a spot available and you're a really good, smart person who's helpful and has impressed them, they're very likely to hire you right out of school. That's actually what happened with me, and what happened with the other, I think, 6 or 7 students of mine that all hired into the ICU. We all precepted together, and we all got hired together. Actually, to be honest, there was 2 people who precepted there with us they did not get hired after school finished, and it wasn't because there was no spot available. They just did not. They did certain things that did not impress the manager. They talked too much. They gave their opinions a little too much. They were not as helpful as they probably could have been. They sat down when their work was done and just kind of chilled out instead of jumping over to help their fellow nurse to do their jobs. They didn't go way above and beyond the call of duty to get the job done, and so the manager did not hire them. So that is a risk. If you precept in the ICU, it doesn't mean they're going to hire you. There are people who do it and do not get hired. So you definitely want to impress the manager and do everything you can to stand out above the crowd if you get in. All right, my third tip. This one actually requires studying, so I know it stinks, but you actually gonna have to get some books. Get some critical care books. You can get them on Amazon. Look them up. Critical care nursing, basic things like that. Even your textbooks that you'll have in nursing school probably will have critical care topics in them. They might call it advanced med surge or something like that, but that's essentially what it is. Your vasoactive drips, ventilators, CRRT, intra-aortic balloon pumps, post-CABG recovery. Start researching that stuff. I don't mean research it to where you know every detail about all of it, but be pretty well versed about some of the basic things that you're going to be doing in the ICU, because that's going to give you your edge. That's going to help you build on that thing when you get into your preceptorship and you actually impress the manager or you impress your preceptor. They will be very impressed if you show up for your preceptorship and you're not completely dense about almost all ICU topics, because most of us are. When we get in that situation, most of us are actually kind of embarrassingly foolish and dense about that stuff when we get in there. I have some comical and tragic stories from my first days in the ICU as a precepting student, and I lived through it. And I got berated and tore up a couple times, and I learned my lessons. But you would do well to have some knowledge about CRRT. That would have helped me in my instance. And some of your vasoactive drips, your main ones, your Neos and Levofeds and Propofols and Verseds, and your sedative type meds that you give a lot, fentanyl. Know a little bit about those drugs so you can impress your preceptor when you get there, and that is going to go a long way too. Fourth and final tip: if all else fails, you make bad grades, you didn't study your vasoactive drips that well, you can't seem to get a precepting job, or I don't know, something comes up and that just doesn't work out for you. There's a lot of stuff happens, life happens. Your backup plan, and I've seen this work for other people. If you get a job at that hospital, and maybe it's a unit secretary job, maybe it's a patient care technician job, maybe a lab technician, phlebotomy, something like that. Get your foot in the door at that hospital and work your way into that unit, or whichever unit you're trying to get into, and work in that unit. Once you work there, whether it be the secretary or any of the kind of assistant jobs that you can do without a degree, if the manager knows you and likes you and sees you working there regularly, sees that you come to work on time, that you leave on time, that you get along with people, that you have a good work ethic, that alone, without precepting, without anything else, I have seen that alone work for people who, even ADN, I've seen people in ADN programs and stuff who have gotten straight into the ICU just for the sheer fact that they knew to network. Network is very important in healthcare, and that's not just for the RN, that's for everything that I've seen in healthcare. Networking, it's a lot about who you know and who knows you and who likes you. And maybe that's not what it should be about, but that is what it's about. And it's about, like, it's with that in most areas. So it's like that in healthcare. If you work in the hospital and you show that you're a good employee and you've networked and the manager knows you and they like you, and you have connected yourself well with that facility, you have a high likelihood of getting hired in at after school when you're graduating, if there's a spot available. So those are my 4 big tips. There might be some more little things that you could do, and maybe I'll put something in the comments if you ask me, or maybe in the description if I come up with something else that I remember that was helpful for me or others that I've seen get into the ICU. But these are the big 4 ones that I know should help you, and hopefully this helps the people who have asked me for this video, and I look forward to hearing that you guys get into the ICU and continue on your CRNA journey. So that's it for me. Bolt out.